So we've been doing this really interesting thing, and I don't know that we've talked about it in the podcast. You obviously know about it, Carrie. We after our power positioning workshop, which if you haven't been to it yet, what are you even doing, really? What are you doing with your life? I don't know when this goes live, but there's probably one coming up. Powerpositioningworkshop.com. You can find the next installment. After the workshop, we've been offering people, at least for now, a free diagnostic assessment. We call it the positioning diagnostic assessment. I think this will eventually become a paid assessment, but for now it's a free kind of 48-point questionnaire that'll help you self-assess your positioning. And we're getting all kinds of really interesting data coming out of this. So we went ahead and analyzed, I think it was the first 60 some odd responses. And we identified where people are getting stuck. And one of the common things that we heard from the responses was, well, I've tried positioning before. Like, I get it. It makes sense. I understand the theory. I get why it's important. And these are people that have been through the workshop, so they understand our particular framework to it. But it's like, oh, I've tried it before and it didn't work. And so today I wanted to dig into what have you tried, most likely, and why didn't it work? Because I think if people stay in that belief, it's like, well, I tried riding a bike before and it didn't work. If my 7-year-old stayed rooted in that belief, she never would have learned how to ride a bike. Make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's a brilliant place to have a conversation because there's a certain semantics kind of issue here, which is really what does positioning mean? And what we're going to uncover is that there's the small p positioning. We're going to talk about what that looks like, right? Like the sort of cursory surface level type of positioning that may make you feel like you're doing something but doesn't get you anywhere. And then there's the capital P positioning that truly links you to your market in a way that's effective. And I'm not sure that most people see the difference between those two things.
I mean, as you say that, I would argue everybody's positioning all the time.
Yeah, whether they know it or not.
I've tried positioning, and no kidding, you're doing it poorly.
Yeah.
That's why it didn't work. It's not like something you do or don't do. You're always doing it. You're out in the market. You're providing services. You're articulating a value proposition. You might be bad at it. Mm-hmm. Might not be going well, but you're still doing it. And so it's really, I guess, it's less about I tried positioning, it didn't work. It's I'm trying it and I can't find a way to make it work. Mm-hmm. That's not what people are saying, but that's kind of the reality of the situation.
Yeah, agreed.
So what do we do?
Well, you've been talking to these people. Tell me why it's not working.
I mean, I think the first thing is there's this kind of funny misconception. People come out of the positioning workshop with us and they think that what they need to do is just figure out the right words. And if I could just put the right words on my LinkedIn profile, put the right words on my website, then everything's going to change. And they approach it as a creative problem. It's a creative exercise. I need to go and brainstorm and put all these ideas together and come up with the right words from a creative perspective. And the truth is, this is not a creativity problem. This is an objectivity problem. Our contention, our experience, and that of many other professionals, we're not unique in this perspective. Maybe more unique than we should be. But not completely unique in this perspective, is that you're going to have a hard time simply coming up with the words that resonate and appeal to your audience because you are not your audience. There's a fundamental empathy gap between you and between them. And what we wanted to get into today are specifically the three cognitive biases that prevent you from being able to meaningfully empathize with your prospect and therefore prevent you from being able to just come up with the words on your own as if it's some kind of a brainstorming exercise internally.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I think a lot of this happens on a whiteboard, real or virtual, in a closed door room, completely disconnected. And, this is sort of a it's the figurative view of what's literally happening, which is you are doing it in a way that is disconnected to your market, disconnected to your prospects, disconnected from your customers. And so, yeah, it's interesting because there's also this notion that I just need the fancy words, right? I need the words that sound the most impressive. And what we're going to talk through is the fact that, impressive, fancy word count is not the point here. The point is what is going to resonate.
It's funny because when you said this happens around a whiteboard, I had like these flashbacks of when in a corporate setting, when I was working at a firm and in the marketing function and business development function, and we would kind of sit around the table and well, what do people want to hear? And what are they looking for? And what should we talk about? And what should we put on the website? What should our tagline be? And all this stuff. And it was just a bunch of us internally sitting around the table, making all kinds of assumptions about what our prospect wants, market wants, what their needs are. And often what happens in these kinds of environments is the loudest or most senior voice in the room wins, whether they're right or wrong, and regardless of their bias. And I think today what often happens is the whiteboard's been replaced with ChatGPT. And now it's like, hey, Chat, hey, Claude, hey, Gemini, like, what does my market want? Or that's often not even the question. That is a slightly intelligent question, slightly intelligent. The question's more so, what should I put on my LinkedIn
What
headline?
should I say? Yeah.
What should I write? Which is a terrible question to start with. So, shall we?
Yep, let's do it. So we're talking about 3 biases today. First one, we talk about, ad infinitum with our clients, which is the curse of knowledge. So tell me what that means to you.
The curse of knowledge to me means you cannot unknow what you know. Like, that's a fundamentally impossible exercise. And so when you think about you and your client, there's like this chasm between you where you have all the expertise that you have. You have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have the reps, you see the patterns, you can see things that they can't see. I mean, hopefully no one's going to disagree with this, right? Because if that were not true, they would not need you. So the fact that they need you means you have some knowledge that they don't have. You see things that they don't see. You have some perspective or expertise that they don't have access to. And because of that, it's kind of like how I used the bike riding example earlier. If I tell my 7-year-old daughter now to like forget how to ride a bike, that's really hard to do, right? Or if I tell you, Carrie, to forget how to drive a car, it's so intuitive to you now, right? Like the neural pathways around the accelerator and the brake and the steering and like all that stuff is so hardwired, you can't possibly forget it. And this is true for us as consultants. All those neural pathways around what we know and how to apply that knowledge and expertise is so set, it's impossible to even see a world where you don't know that anymore. And that's where this empathy gap, fundamentally presents itself. Is you're on one side of a chasm, they're on the other side, and you cannot possibly fully empathize with where they are, their plight, and how they see the world, because you know what they don't know, and you don't remember what it's like to not know what you know.
Yeah. And what it means is that you often shift the focus when you're communicating from what they're feeling and worried about and what's keeping them up at night, right? Like the real problem. And you want to focus on the minutia of what you know, right? Like on your specific expertise, on the process that you follow, on, the detail of why you got there and how. When honestly, they couldn't care less. Like they just want someone to make the pain go away. You go to the doctor, you don't want them to explain to you how this drug was developed and how many tests it went through and, where it came from and who invented it. You just want them to give it to you so you can pop it in your mouth and feel better the next day. And what happens, to many consultants because of this curse of knowledge is that you end up minimizing, ignoring the way that the client is feeling and how they're experiencing it, because to your point, that hasn't been you for a very long time.
And to your point, you default to what you're most comfortable with.
Mhm.
And what you're most comfortable with are the details and the nuances of your solution and why it works and how effective it is and how brilliant it is and how unique it is, as if somehow proving the sophistication of your particular solution is going to convert the prospect. And I think that's a subtle belief that a lot of consultants hold. I have to prove that my thing is better than the other things.
Mhm.
And if I can prove that we are superior, they're going to work with us. And I never heard a client once say, I want to work with the superior solution,
Right.
right? The one that's like objectively better, because that's not even provable, to be honest. That's entirely a subjective exercise.
Yeah. And so what we're talking about is finding a way past the curse of knowledge, right? Finding a way that you can put yourself back in the shoes of the people that you're speaking with. And that leads us into, I would say, the second bias, which is a mismatch of language. Because if you can't put yourself in their shoes, then you can't speak to them in a way that they're going to hear.
If you've ever read like a very like academic paper, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a good example. So my father is a research scientist, okay, and he's specialized in, ready for it, aquatic ecosystem health and management, okay,
Amazing.
and specifically phytoplankton and zooplankton, okay. Don't ask me what these things mean. And so part of what he does is he runs an academic journal, okay, and they get manuscripts from academics and researchers all over the world who submit, like any journal, to be published in the journal, and then they edit and they advise and so on, and they ultimately publish the journal. And for some reason, at one point in my life, I was a technical editor.
Wow.
Okay, of this journal. I don't know if technical maybe is the wrong word. I was not an editor of the content. I was an editor of the language, because they would get journal submissions from all over the world,
Mhm.
including places where English was not the first language. And so the scientific content was very strong, but the language wasn't great, right? And so I was an editor of this material. And I would edit it, and I would clarify the language, and I would sharpen the language and make it more clear. And I would read these papers, and guess how much of it I understood? Without a science background, without a biology background of really any sort beyond the basic high school, secondary education, I understood nothing. It was like, and actually it made the job fairly challenging. I'd often have to go to my father and say, what are they trying to say here? Because I'm trying to edit this, but I don't really, it made it challenging because they're speaking a different language.
Yeah.
And we just can't communicate. I just can't fundamentally understand what they're saying. We don't have the same background. We don't have the same knowledge. We don't have the same context. And this is very similar to what happens with you and your clients. And obviously it's a function of the curse of knowledge, is that you speak different languages. And I mean, you don't actually speak different languages. You both speak English, presumably, or whatever language is, right? And so you feel like you should be able to communicate, but at the same time, the way they describe their problem is different than how you describe it. The way it shows up is different the way that you describe that it would show up. The way it feels is different how you describe. And this is why, when we have our clients go through a customer research process inside 90-day pipeline, what always comes up is, I would never have assigned this language to the problem. I would have never described it this way. Because again, you're going to describe the problem from the perspective of your expertise. They're going to describe it from the perspective of their lack of expertise, and it's going to sound different.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something here, there's a thread around relatability, right? And recognizing that clients are coming to you for a solution, yes, but they're coming to you because they trust you, because there's a link, because there's a connection, because they feel like you will listen to them, hear them, and understand them. And so as much as it seems like the smart thing to do is to walk in and be the, smartest person in the room, use all the big words, all that does is create a bigger divide, right? It increases the size of that chasm between you and them, which is the last thing you want when you're having a conversation about potentially working together.
Yeah, our customer research coach, Anna, often says that part of the problem here with consultants is that we are too good at synthesizing information. So the client prospect professes a bunch of pain points in very raw language, and we're not paying attention to that language. We're too busy synthesizing that into a root cause and spitting
Yeah.
back, oh, here's the real problem. And they're like, what? No, I never said that. Those are
Yeah.
not my words. And there's this fundamental disconnect. And obviously we're less speaking about this in the context of a conversation, because you can hopefully get over that language barrier, if you will. What we're talking about is when you sit down to write your LinkedIn profile or your website or a LinkedIn post or any kind of marketing communication where you're seeking to persuade and get attention, and the words that come out onto paper are from your brain, you've fundamentally lost the battle, because your brain's not going to produce the words that your prospects would use.
And there's a challenge here in that it's confronting to your ego, because you know a lot, right? You're excited about it. You want to use the big words. You want to go to the nth degree of your knowledge, because that is the thing that, allows you to feel really confident and great about what you do. But it's about recognizing that you need to speak in terms that the folks who have less understanding of the subject matter will get. And so there's a stage here of just kind of getting over yourself, honestly, and recognizing the value of connection over the value of being able to spout expertise.
Well, interesting phenomenon, and you've seen this a lot, Carrie, is among our clients, they start publishing on LinkedIn and they come back to us and they say, hey, a funny thing is happening. I'm getting attention from my peers.
Yes.
Other consultants, other practitioners. Like, why is that happening? Well, it's because you're speaking to your peers.
Yep.
You're speaking at a level that only your peers actually understand. You're using expert language. And so you have to kind of prioritize the desire to be relatable to your prospect over the desire to sound smart in front of your peers.
Yeah.
Not everyone's able to do that, frankly.
Yeah. Agreed.
Number 3?
Yep. Third bias. It's an old faithful, confirmation bias.
An oldie but a goodie, right?
Yep.
Confirmation bias. So we have a ton of data and experience here coaching consultants through the process of developing a value proposition and an offer and positioning. And what we find is that more often than not, there's a bias. There's a preference. There's a thing that you really want to do. There's a thing that you really want to sell. There's a value proposition that you really want to make. And so what happens, and this is in the context of doing customer research and not doing it, this applies in both scenarios, is you look for information that validates your preference.
Yes.
You look for anecdotes or insight that validates your particular offer that you want to make, your positioning, your value proposition, and you ignore evidence to the contrary. So what ends up happening is you don't actually take to market or position or sell the thing the market wants. You end up taking to market the thing that you want the market to want. Mm-hmm. Do you get lucky sometimes? Absolutely. Other times, do you have some success, but probably not as much success as you would have if you were more true to what the market needs? Sure. And do other times people fall flat on their faces and get no traction whatsoever because they're too stuck in what they actually want the market to want and are not grounded enough in what the market actually wants? Absolutely.
Yeah, and the problem here is this one is really hard to get out of because people are holding on so tightly to the thing that they believe that it's really easy to ignore all the signals to the contrary. And so, what we have people do is go through a very structured process to get objective data as much as they can. But without that kind of process in place, you really run the risk of holding on to your bias for, weeks and months and years. And then, just wondering why you can't shove your solution down the throat of the people that you want to join you in it.
And this is where it's going to sound really convenient for me to say this, but it's the honest to goodness truth. This is where it's hard to do this on your own. Because, the other two biases, cursive knowledge, language mismatch. I mean, you can overcome those by going out and doing customer research. That's outside the scope of today's podcast, but there's a structure, there's an approach to doing customer research well and to gathering data that's meaningful. And you can overcome those biases by going out and doing that properly. You're not going to be able to overcome confirmation bias on your own. Because even if you do the research, even if you look at the data, I mean, scientists have this problem.
Yeah.
How many scientific studies are fundamentally flawed? Not because the data's wrong or the research was done wrong or improperly, but because the scientists had a bias on what they wanted to happen. So they read that into the data and they interpreted and skewed and spun the data to support their particular bias. This is hard to do on your own. This is where our clients find a ton of value in working with us and with the coaches. It happened the other day as a little anecdote. I was reviewing a client's messaging with them. And one of the questions in the messaging exercise, once they've identified the prospect and the buyer persona, is what do they want? What are they trying? What is your particular buyer persona, prospect? What are they trying to achieve? What do they want? And our client here in this example had an articulation that I can tell from a mile away is their projection onto their client. It's not what the client actually wants. It's not their language. It didn't come from the customer research, although this person had done customer research. It came from their projection. It would be nice if they wanted this. It's like they're trying to insert a desire on the part of the prospect to fit their solution. Solution came first. This is what I want to sell. So here's what I think they want to achieve in order to want my solution. And so obviously we called it out. We had a conversation. My question was, is this their language or is this your projection? Fortunately, the client was self-aware and honest enough to acknowledge this was their projection. Back to the drawing board. But if you don't have that objective third-party perspective holding you accountable to the data, you're going to make some very expensive mistakes.
Yeah. So 3 biases that none of us are immune to, that we all need to watch out for. And what's, I think, more dangerous is that people often have all 3, right? And they feed into each other and they sort of push you down a path where you can feel like you have a certain level of confidence. But what's happening is that you're actually dragging yourself farther and farther away from the people that you want to serve.
And the challenging thing is, this is not a problem that you can solve on the whiteboard. This is not a problem that you can solve on ChatGPT. This is not a problem that you have the, I want to say intelligence, but I don't mean it in the way that it's not that you're not smart enough, but you don't have the data. You don't have the intelligence in terms of data, information to be able to overcome these biases. So the solution is ultimately that you need to gather data via customer research that bypasses your expert brain, bypasses these filters, bypasses these biases. So they don't even have a chance to activate because you've got another source of truth that is superseding all of these biases.